Hi, my name is Norma Van Horn, and I visualize a world in which everyone has access to inner peace. And today I'm going to share a few ideas and tips for families that want to begin a centering and grounding practice for the family. And so, to begin, parents set the emotional regulation tone of the household. In the business world, we think of the saying, culture starts at the top. The exact same thing is true in the family. So it is the state of parents' own self-regulation and state of being centered and grounded, embodied, connected, that directly impacts the kids' own emotional regulation. So kids will not be able to emotionally ground and center and embody if it's not supported within the culture. And the only way it can be supported within the culture is if the parents have a centering and grounding practice that they model for the kids. So that's foundational. And when we are out of our center, when we are dysregulated, disembodied, then it is highly unstable for the kids. So our own regulation matters because it gives those brains and nervous systems of our growing and developing children a solid foundation upon which to land as they learn to regulate. So one practice I am committed to with my family is a weekly centering and grounding practice. And I have two teenage boys, older teenage boys, 15 and 17 now, and they don't always want to practice. They don't always want to participate. So, and I was a little late to the game because I only started this practice within the last 5 years. So, as the saying goes, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. So, I didn't get started with them 20 years ago, 15 years ago when they were young, but starting late is better than not starting at all. So last night, Sunday night, I scheduled a family centering and grounding with my kids and my husband. And as it came time to begin, one of my empowered and thoughtful children came to me and said that he didn't think that he should have to participate because it didn't feel authentic to him. Now, I love this thinking. I want to encourage and support this thinking that we should never override the truth in our bodies to do something that doesn't feel true in a moment. 100% support that. However, in this instance, I disagreed with him, and here's why. I now believe that my emotional well-being, my state of being embodied, my state of being centered and grounded, is the foundation and the cornerstone of my entire well-being. Meaning, it doesn't matter how well things are going in other aspects of my life, of my health, if my emotions are not regulated and if I'm not centered and grounded and embodied, because if I'm not, then I will not be present for the goodness. I'm actually unable to experience it. So it's a prerequisite to actually experiencing all other forms of well-being in my life. And I didn't always think this way. There was a time when my embodiment and emotional regulation wasn't on my radar. And even if it had been on my radar, I didn't have any tools for tending to it. I had no idea how to take responsibility for it. And I actually think this is pretty common in our culture as well. But now I have come to trust that tending to my emotional well-being and having regular emotional regulation and embodiment practices is no different than brushing teeth. It's no different than exercising. It's no different than eating vegetables. It is that foundational to true health. So that's what I told him. And then I shared that there were years in which he wouldn't have brushed his teeth because it wouldn't have felt authentic to him. He wouldn't have gone on all those bike rides because they wouldn't have been authentic to him in the moment. So that didn't mean that his body didn't receive benefit from those practices. So he understood all of this, and we went and had our practice. So I want to offer a few tips for those in a similar situation, especially if you're adding this in along the way, if it's new for your family, if and if you're experiencing any resistance. The first tip is this. Actually, after parents' regulation is everything. So having a practice of your own is important. Number 2, expect resistance, but don't let it deter you. Just expect it, incorporate it, respond to it, decide in advance how you're going to respond to it, and then proceed. Number 3, and this goes along with the first one, but you really must model the practices that you wish to impart. For me, this means that I tend to my own inner landscape 10 times, 20 times, 100 times for every one time that I actually engage with it with my kids. Meaning I'm actively modeling it, even if it's just in their subconscious awareness. I'm actively taking responsibility for it. And this is key because kids are hypocrisy finders. If this isn't important to you on your own, if you are not actively walking the walk, then consider the idea that you actually have an agenda for your kids. You want them to be regulated so that you can feel peaceful, but you're not actually willing to take responsibility for your own regulation. And just own that. And know that starting a centering and grounding practice is big. It stirs things. It requires holding space for our pain, for our fear, which can feel really scary at first until we learn to trust the process and we learn to trust what is on the other side of our dysregulation. And growing through our own resistance is a part of the process. 4th, be flexible. When my son said what he said, he was in a state of resistance to centering and grounding. As I said, this is all part of the process of learning to trust the process. So learning to trust the piece that's on the other side of that re-embodying and reconnecting with self-practice is really valuable. And so I followed up on my verbal response, what I shared with him and told him, by honoring his resistance. And then I shifted my plan. I'd originally planned on a longer centering and grounding practice, a more deep and involved one. And I shifted it to a shorter one. And I added a family walk for our dog. So the 4 of us took our dog on a walk. So this is also a great form of emotional regulation within the family. So we were still getting this rock solid re-embodiment practice in, and still modeling the value and the power of the practice, but doing so that incorporated feedback from those that are directly affected by it. And just a final note, helping people develop their own medicine bag, their own toolkit of practices for emotional regulation, both for the self and for the family, is my passion. I call it developing your own medicine for the world, meaning developing your list of practices and tools. And if you would like support in developing your own medicine, your own toolkit on this journey, please reach out. I would love to support you on your journey. I offer a 4-week guided coaching package to do just this. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. If you have any thoughts or feedback, I'd love to hear it. And if you'd like to have a 15-minute discovery chat to see if this is right for you, please reach out. Thank you. Best wishes. Blue skies.